Well, good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me okay. All the way in the back? Good. I see some thumbs up. I'm Emily Finnell. I lead the Office of the Great Lakes, which is part of the Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy. And I am the Great Lakes Senior Advisor and Strategist. I've actually been with the office for 27 years, which is incredible to me to say that. I started as a student when I was at Michigan State, and I've had just a tremendous career working on something that I'm so passionate about, our Great Lakes. So I'm happy to be here with you this afternoon. I'm going to talk a little bit about the office, the history of our Great Lakes, and focus in on some of the important issues that we're working on as an office with many partners across the state, as well as our other Great Lakes sister states and 2 Canadian provinces that we share this beautiful, precious resource. Our office has actually been around for 40 years, so it's our 40th anniversary. We were created in statute in 1985 by Governor Blanchard, really recognizing how important the Great Lakes are to our history, our culture, our way of life, and our economy. And really that, I think, you can see here in Manistee, you see the ironworks and the ability to ship raw materials out of this port area. You see the beautiful coastline and the way that we can enjoy and recreate at our beaches, and how important water is to this community, not only at the Great Lakes level, but our rivers and lakes and streams that all drain to the Great Lakes. Our office is responsible for leading policy, working across our sister state agencies, and as I said, our other Great Lakes states and the 2 Canadian provinces. It's really important that we build strong relationships and we uphold high standards for protecting the Great Lakes. We have 40% of the Great Lakes watershed and touch 4 out of 5 of the Great Lakes, so it's incumbent upon Michigan to make sure that we're upholding the highest standards. These are some of the goals that we focus on: protecting and restoring our aquatic ecosystems, supporting healthy and vibrant communities, building collaboration, and promoting water stewardship. And some of the core work that we do in the office, as I said, is working across the basin. There are a number of regional organizations that we're really fortunate to have. Groups like the Great Lakes Commission, which is an interstate compact organization that's been around for 70 years. We also work as an executive group across the Great Lakes governors and premiers. And then we work on sustainable Great Lakes water use, making sure that we're protecting our Great Lakes water, we're keeping it here within the basin, and we're using it in the most efficient and sustainable manner. One of the other areas that's really important to the work that we do in the office and part of our statute is to support sustainable maritime development and make sure that we have efficient movement of goods across the Great Lakes, that our ships are also making sure that they're protective of the environment and not discharging invasive species into the Great Lakes, and promoting tourism in our harbor towns. Many of our harbor towns are important Great Lakes cruising destinations, but also places that we all love to visit and live, work, and play in. We have a small research grant program in our office called the Michigan Great Lakes Protection Fund, and we use that to help inform policy and decision making, to help make sure that we have the best science to support all of our resource management. And then obviously helping to make sure that all Michiganders understand how important the Great Lakes are, that we all live in a connected watershed and a connected system. So decisions that we make in our homes and in our daily lives have an effect on all of our local waters and affect downstream communities as well. So we want to make sure we're being good stewards of the Great Lakes for future generations. These are some pictures just from across Michigan. One of them is Pyramid Point, looking out at the Manitou Islands on Lake Michigan. The amazing renaissance that has occurred along the Detroit riverfront. But we also have amazing maritime cultural resources with all of our lighthouses along the Great Lakes. And we have really diverse ecosystems and a lot of rare and endangered and threatened species in the Great Lakes. Our history has been very much tied to all of the abundant natural and resources that we have in the state. So our timber, our fishery, lots of raw minerals, iron, copper. So the Great Lakes were really important as kind of that first navigation to be able to ship these goods to all around the world. We live in a very connected supply chain and global economy. So these were really important in helping to create a lot of prosperity in our state. But there were a lot of consequences to those those industries and those activities. We definitely overfished our Great Lakes over several generations. We've had a lot of water pollution and industrial pollution from being a very rich manufacturing state, and also runoff from being the second largest economy, agriculture in our state, and that's had an impact on the quality of our waters and our water resources across the state. In the 1950s and 1960s, we saw a lot of water pollution from these activities and nutrients becoming really severe. Rivers were catching on fire. We had large algal blooms in places like our shallow bays like Saginaw Bay, as well as Western Lake Erie. And it really, at that time, it was the public that got very involved in advocating for protecting the health of our lakes and improving water quality. And that led to the passage of our first environmental protection laws under the Clean Water Act in 1972. In addition, we saw those excessive algal blooms in Lake Erie, and that really led both the US and Canada to take action and form what's called the Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement back in 1972. And this was a commitment made by both countries to work together to protect and restore these shared water resources. Some of the early successes that we saw were the ban and phasing out of the use of phosphorus in detergents, which had a significant impact on reducing those harmful algal blooms from occurring in the Great Lakes. There were several amendments to the Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement, one in 1987, and then another one in 2012. We also saw significant improvements in reducing pollution discharges from our wastewater treatment plants. So we made some really early progress under the Water Quality Agreement at that time. But progress was pretty slow since that phase out of phosphorus and those bans and those reductions at wastewater treatment plants, until we had a really huge investment in Great Lakes federal funding. Back in the early 2000s, we came together as a region to really speak on behalf of the Great Lakes in one voice and put together a strategy to help protect and restore the Great Lakes and kind of make that federal ask for additional funding to help support protecting and restoring the Great Lakes. And that was called the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. We've had 5-year action plans under what we call the GLRI. We're under our current 4th action plan that we're working together on a domestic standpoint with all of the 8 Great Lakes states. And we're trying to address some of the kind of biggest challenges facing the health of the lakes, and that's cleaning up a lot of the contaminated sediment from this industrial activity that we've had, protecting and restoring habitat, addressing invasive species like zebra mussels, quagga mussels, invasive carp. That's actually a rusty crayfish, although it looks like a little lobster. And then reducing nutrients to try to help protect water quality so that it's safe for fishing, swimming, and drinking, and then trying to promote more environmental stewardship. And we've seen some tremendous benefits from this investment in environmental restoration from an economic standpoint. Several years ago, we did an economic study with several partners, and that showed a 3-to-1 return on the investment. So for every dollar that we've invested in restoring and protecting areas in the Great Lakes and in our communities, we're seeing $3 returned. Increases in things like property values, increased tourism, improved public access, fishing and recreation. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the State of the Great Lakes. We produce an annual State of the Great Lakes report on behalf of the governor. Out at one of the tables in sort of the lobby area when you came in, there were some copies of the report. There's also an electronic version on our website. And each year we produce this report since our office was created to really highlight what are some of the big issues that are affecting the Great Lakes and how is Michigan working with its partners to make progress to address those. I'm going to just talk briefly on this slide. If you were here in the morning, you saw some really great presentations on some of the work to bring back fishes in the Great Lakes and in Michigan in particular. We heard from the tribes on the work to restore and revitalize and really reinvigorate the Arctic grayling, which is an exciting success story that we hope to continue to be able to tell over the next coming years. But what's happening is a lot of our partners, both tribal, state and federal agencies and communities, are working together to look at the opportunity in Michigan's rivers to be a place where we can restore those natural historical spawning grounds for some important fish. Arctic grayling is one of those, and there's also significant effort underway right now to look at rivers as a place where we can restore whitefish populations. And it's really through these collaborative partnerships where we're able to bring all of this important science and knowledge and through these relationships, and also working with the tribes to bring in that traditional ecological knowledge and that historical perspective of where these fishes were generations before we had European settlement in the Great Lakes and in Michigan. A very important issue to the state of Michigan and to our sister states and provinces is keeping invasive carp out of the Great Lakes. This is something that we are putting all of our attention and resources into. We're very concerned about the potential of invasive carp getting into the lakes, both bighead, silver, and black. This has been an issue we've been focused on for more than 20 years, working closely with the state of Illinois. There are a few areas where there's potential that invasive carp like silver and bighead could migrate into the Great Lakes, and that's through the Chicago Sanitary Ship Canal and then the Brandon Road Lock and Dam. And so we've got a couple of electric barriers that are in place in the Chicago area waterway system. The big focus right now has been on really trying to create a dead end for potential introduction through that Brandon Road Lock and Dam. Last summer, we had a great success where we entered into an intergovernmental agreement with the state of Illinois and our state so that we could make that financial commitment for the non-federal cost share that's required to match the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers federal funding appropriation to construct another electric barrier and make a permanent road end for the Brandon Road Lock and Dam. So as you can see, Michigan has put up $72 million of a commitment. Illinois has $50 million. This is a total $1.1 billion project with 3 phases. And we're really looking forward to continuing to work with the state of Illinois and the region to make sure that this project moves forward and happens. Something that keeps me up at night are microplastics. We have a tremendous amount of plastic pollution all around the world, but in particular in the Great Lakes. We have levels found in Great Lakes fish that are some of the highest around the world. And this happens as a result of things like plastic bags, other debris that gets into our storm drains, and that plastic breaks down. But it's also coming from our homes and our use of certain types of clothing that are made from recycled plastics and other materials, or those pods that break down in our dishwashers and our washer machines and are not able to be captured at our wastewater treatment plants. So when that water gets treated and discharged into our rivers, we're getting microplastics and other types of plastic pollution in these waterways. So we're finding it in water, sediment, in fish, it's on our beaches, it's also in the air. Recently, the International Joint Commission issued a study that just came out end of 2024, doing a statewide assessment on microplastics in the Great Lakes. They've also made some recommendations on developing a regional framework for monitoring and risk assessment. And really for the first time in Michigan, we have an appropriation for about $2 million that we will start some monitoring efforts over the next 5 years to look at microplastic concentrations in our waterways. We'll be investing in some research to help improve our understanding of how we can better manage and understand the extent of these plastics. And then also what kind of statewide strategies do we need to put in place to help us reduce the risk and impacts on the environment and on human health. There's some new technologies too that are really exciting, and that's something that we have to look at in the suite of tools that we use to manage and protect the resources. There's a technology called the Great Bubble Barrier technology that was tested, and they're doing some feasibility work over in Wisconsin, and we're looking at the potential of installing this technology in Michigan in the Grand River that would ultimately drain out to Lake Michigan and help capture some of that plastic pollution. Another important project that we've been heavily involved in with our office is looking at how do we help communities around the state who have some of that historical legacy contamination, like areas of concern that were established under the Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement, but don't necessarily have the dedicated state and federal staff and local citizen advisory groups to help support taking next steps to restore and remediate those areas. So we've been working really closely with the city of Benton Harbor and the surrounding communities over the last 4 years or so to help the city be able to successfully achieve its vision for restoring and revitalizing Ox Creek, which is a major tributary in the St. Joe River watershed that drains to the Paw Paw River and then out into the St. Joe River and out to Lake Michigan. The city really envisions having this be a revitalized and restored corridor with a non-motorized recreational trail system, rehabilitating and revitalizing the city's oldest park, Hall Park, which is in the center of the community. That's a very important, beloved place for the residents to gather with their families, and then create some new commercial development and housing opportunities, as well as opportunities for the community to get involved in stewardship. And so they've called this the Ox Creek Revitalization and Restoration Initiative. There are some major issues affecting this community, and they have very limited resources within this city. It's one of the top 100 poorest communities in our country. And there's a number of issues that are common to many of our coastal communities and our urban communities. There's a lot of non-point source issues with runoff from both urban and rural areas. There's some agriculture in the headwaters, but a lot of development within the city's jurisdiction. There's a tremendous amount of illegal dumping, like $1 million worth of dumping, not the kind you can pick up just with a volunteer debris cleanup effort, but something that you need equipment for. There are legacy contaminated sites from plating and other manufacturing. And then there's parks and other natural areas that need to be improved to make those vibrant, safe recreational areas. So we've been working with this community, and we're interested in kind of scaling up this approach and working with other communities around the state to help them develop a revitalization plan. We've been successful in helping them form a collaborative partnership that includes more than 15 different state, local, and federal agencies and other community organizations. And we've also been successful in helping them secure about $15 million to start implementing some short-term projects and initiatives. On the other side of the state, there's a huge effort to work towards removing all of the beneficial use impairments. So those are kind of all the ways that we use and enjoy water in our communities, from eating fish, making sure that those are safe to eat, making sure that the water is clean and safe to drink, doesn't have odors associated with it, that the sediments are clean. So we call those beneficial uses. And under the Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement in 1987, there were 43 areas of concern designated as sort of the most contaminated sites around the Great Lakes in the US and Canada. 31 of those are in the United States, and we had 14 in Michigan that were designated. We have restored those beneficial uses in 3 of our areas of concern. One of them is White Lake on Lake Michigan. We hope to be delisting or fully restoring and completing all the actions needed in Muskegon Lake later this year. But Detroit has also been an area of concern that's binational. And over $150 million has been invested by philanthropy and other federal resources to help clean up and revitalize the entire Detroit riverfront area. The next stage is to really look at addressing the legacy historical contaminated sediments in the area, and there's a huge community effort underway to help tackle that. More details are in our report that's out on the table. Something that I'm also very excited about that our office has been leading this year is working with a number of state agencies, as well as the private sector and industry, to help develop a statewide Michigan maritime strategy. We have funded a team at the University of Michigan who will be working with us to create this strategy. We just had a workshop with stakeholders a couple of weeks ago, but this strategy will lay out a plan for Michigan to support decarbonization, electrifying, greening, and long-term sustainability and infrastructure investments needed in both our commercial and recreational ports and harbors, and then also look at on the water side where there are opportunities for us to advance innovation and technology for cleaner energy solutions for recreational boats and commercial boats and vessels. So things like our ferry systems that run between some of our peopled islands. We also received some funding under some federal programs under EPA's Clean Ports program, $3 million through our office to help stand up the My Clean Ports program that will help support port communities and taking some next steps to reduce emissions, improve public health in their communities, as well as look at some cleaner energy solutions for some of the equipment and operations at the ports. Detroit also received at the Port of Detroit another $21 million investment for infrastructure improvements to electrify a lot of their equipment and technologies, and then also support additional work on their decarbonization planning. A couple other issues that are important that are affecting the health of our Great Lakes and our water resources. Michigan is the only state that doesn't have a statewide sanitary septic code. I feel like I've been giving this talk about this topic for my entire career, but this one we still haven't seemed to find a solution for. So we have 1.3 million homes that have septic systems. There currently is no law or requirement or sort of practice in place for people to routinely inspect and maintain their septic systems. And so they can cause runoff into or through the groundwater of those nutrients that can infect your inland lake that you may live on, your nearby fishing stream. So it's a big issue that we're still trying to figure out how to tackle. But we've had some great progress in the last year and a half. We had some funding appropriated, $35 million for our on-site wastewater management unit, which is another way to refer to septic systems. And there's now a replacement loan program to help provide homeowners with a loan to do that kind of replacement or repair work that can be very costly. And so we've seen a huge demand for that program, and we're looking forward to continuing operating it until we can get some system in place to require some kind of routine maintenance and testing. Nutrients are a big issue across the lakes, especially in our nearshore areas with warming water temperatures, more runoff occurring with more development and other types of agricultural practices. We're also starting to see algal blooms occurring in Lake Superior for the first time. So we typically think of that lake being nutrient poor, very cold water, but we are seeing a lot of warmer temperatures in the nearshore areas. That's actually the fastest freshwater lake in the world right now in terms of its temperature increasing. So there's a lot of different drivers that are contributing to these harmful algal blooms, things like agricultural practices, weather events like frequent and intense storms. Sometimes when we have droughts and then we have a massive rain event, we'll get a lot of runoff, reduced winter ice cover on the lakes, and then invasive species. So we know that zebra and quagga mussels are having an impact in terms of clearing up the water, improving the clarity, allowing sunlight to penetrate deeper, but that also increases plant growth, and then concentrating a lot of nutrients in the bottomlands, which can cause more algae to grow. So we've had a great collaboration with the state of Ohio and the province of Ontario to try to address Western Lake Erie through some targets that we've set to try to reduce phosphorus by 40% in 2025. And that really requires a huge collaboration involving a lot of local partners at the community level. I just have a couple more quick slides focusing around some of our work to help foster stewardship in the state. So we're focusing on all ages of Michiganders, but we have some intense efforts on kind of that next generation. And we call this our From Students to Stewards initiative. And we've been working with Department of Education, the MySTEM network, which focuses on STEM education or science, technology, engineering, and math. And we are now providing, over the last several years, some funding to support schools to create projects for students to work on that are problem, project, and place-based learning. So getting youth working on local community water issues in a hands-on way, and then also identifying and working on projects that help address those solutions. This year we've got some new funding that we'll be looking at to help with creating our freshwater education database for resources for schools to do this across the state. We're going to provide transportation funding for Wheels to Water. And this will provide funding for schools to take students to field trips to go see our water resources, and then work on some projects at the community level to be able to get those hands-on learning experiences. And we're also trying to find ways to create exposure to career pathways so that we can attract more people into the water workforce. Lastly, I'll just say, I think for many of us who, I'm fifth generation from Michigan, spent a lot of time along the lakes and in the water, by the water. Water really plays an important role in our overall wellness and our well-being. And so we're really trying to help find ways to help people connect into ways that they can experience water, whether it's being by or near the water on a accessible path, or improving public access to a nearby waterway or stream, and creating those opportunities for more connection in community to water. And ultimately, we've seen a lot of positive results in that, helping to encourage supporting the resources and also stewardship of our water resources. Lastly, I'll just say we have an annual Great Lakes and Freshwater Week that we host every year that the governor proclaims. This is usually like the first week of June. This year it'll be May 31st through June 8th. And we focus on increasing those opportunities for people to experience and enjoy and appreciate our water resources, to get involved in their communities in stewardship activities like river cleanups, but also to learn about how we live in a connected watershed and a connected system and things that you can do in your daily lives. So with that, there's the link to our State of the Great Lakes report, and we'll have more information on our Great Lakes and Freshwater Week website at our Stewarding the Great Lakes.